Do you feel that China is moving closer to being the US or the US is moving closer to being China? What is interesting is that my friend Louis Gobb, who I've had on this podcast before, who is a really tremendous economist and thinker, and I hold in very high regard, has talked about this for several years of certain policies that, as much as the US has been, particularly post COVID, but really since 2015, there's been a real awakening of a lot of the problems of communist China. And so the West has been critical, and I think appropriately so, of a significant amount of Chinese policy, all the while perhaps not recognizing that they were behaving in their own monetary policy, behaving in their own bond markets, behaving in their own currency far more responsibly than a lot of Western nations, and oftentimes including our own. But I don't think that those points negate the just grotesque violations of human liberty and the mere reality of state-owned enterprises that has existed in China. But Louis was always making a directional argument. He was critical of U.S. seizing Russian rubles and taking assets from oligarchs and things, and then of course a lot of COVID policies. So there's, if you went down a list, I'd probably agree with most, not all. But my point being, directionally, you could have agreed with it then or not. But when you wake up and see a headline, US to take 10% stake in Intel, and you think, okay, is there a bailout? No. Intel's a profitable company. Is there a debt default? No. Is there a systemic risk affecting bank depositors? No. The US is taking a 10% stake in Intel and rationalizing it on the basis one day of national security because semiconductors and chips are important. And then on the other day is saying, well, we gave them grants for CHIPS Act. We're going to convert that money into equity. Well, that's not in the CHIPS Act. That's not in the bill. So you can change the bill and then give companies the choice if they want, in taking grants, to dilute equity shareholders and grant the U.S. government the rights of shareholders. Are they going to do it to all companies that take CHIPS Act money? And why are they doing this for this sector? Well, you could say, oh, because microprocessors or semiconductors are a vital part of national security. So we have to have equity in it. Well, missile defense systems are a vital part of national security. They do not have government stake in Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon. Maybe that's next. But traditionally, there's almost, we didn't nationalize our banking system. Our banking system is vital to national security and a functioning society. We didn't nationalize energy. In fact, we only have an energy sector because it isn't nationalized. So we're not part of an OPEC cartel. We didn't create our own. We have robust, competitive, beautiful capital markets undergirding with a profit and loss system that provides price discovery, provides competition, and provided an unbelievable result that resulted in us becoming a net exporter after decades of being dependent on bad actors to meet our energy needs. We now became a major player in oil and gas as a result of a privatized sector. There is absolutely no limiting principle to the US taking equity stakes, saying, well, but it's important. I agree, Intel is an important company and an important sector. But the notion of government picking winners and losers, will the government's equity stake be allowed to fail? Will the government's equity be senior to other equity stakeholders? Does this, in effect, change the capital structure of the company? Do we want not mutual fund managers, hedge fund managers, pension managers, people participating in profit and loss, but do we want Elizabeth Warren or Donald Trump or Barack Obama or whoever you want, name a cabinet secretary or a senator or a committee finance chair or a president? Do we want them voting proxies? making decisions on executive compensation, making decisions on company strategy. And by the way, doing all this with other people's money, a country that is, I should add, $37 trillion in debt, that perhaps has not been a great steward of their own balance sheet. There isn't even a prima facie acceptability to this outlandish idea. And when people say, well, what about the Wall Street bailouts in 2004? Well, first of all, the bond bailouts of 2004, which is what they were, an attempt to inject equity so that the bond market didn't tip over and depositors didn't lose money. They did inject a convertible equity stake that came at a high coupon so as to incentivize the companies to pay it off as soon as possible and refund the taxpayers at huge profits, all of which they did so. And the companies, some of which were forced to take it against their will, some of which it was a backdoor bailout. They simply didn't need it. And their equity paid a significant price. Lehman died, Bear died, but AIG stock was crushed. Citigroup stock remains crushed. So it was an outlandish thing that happened, done in a very poor way, but that's not what happened. But it was done on the basis of some sort of systemic risk to the economy. And there's no sensible people that talk about that anymore. It never should have happened. It never should have needed to happen. But no one is arguing that we have to take equity stakes or do licensing deals with NVIDIA or get a piece of U.S. steel for this venture with Nippon Steel because of any kind of risk to the economy. This is government control. And there isn't a single person that likes this administration that would be approving of this policy if it were being done by Joe Biden or Barack Obama. And you say, well, yeah, but they're not president and Trump's a businessman and I trust him. Oh, stop it. President Trump will not be president in 3 more years. This is not about liking a president doing something that you don't believe they should be doing. It's about understanding the limiting principles. And this is where my criticism comes. I don't expect a lot from Secretary Lutnick because I don't believe him to be a conservative. Donald Trump says a lot of things, doesn't follow up on a lot, but he's not an ideologue. The people that are most silent on this, and in some cases not silent because they're actually saying, well, we think it's a good thing, ought to be ashamed of themselves. There is no chance we maintain a market economy, the profit and loss system, one rooted on getting price discovery from which free actors make decisions in their endeavors, in their natural course of human action that goes to produce goods and services that meet the needs of others, and in so doing have their own needs met.